say that because not everybody wants that, and not everybody is ready. But if you're ready to ask the question, it's a great study. So we're very excited about it. We're going to offer it on Sunday morning at 9. Also going to be offered on Thursday at 9:15. I'm going to teach that now. Tom and I will teach Sunday morning class. It starts Sunday, October the 7th. So go online and register. So have an easy time of that. And so, type in living the questions. Surely something will come up. Also, most of you, if you're paying attention, got it. A major announcement. Anybody heard that announcement yet? Okay, I didn't feel like a lot of people. Dr. Brewster did announce, he's our senior pastor, did announce that he would be hiring in end of June next summer, June 2000. And so Lance Marshall and co-pastor at that time. So this gives us a little time to get used to the idea and say goodbye to him as we start to see others start to happen. So an email is going to go out this afternoon, right after at noon. So if I run over, but it'll go out at noon. It's a very long one, but it faces the whole history of how this works. So that'll be good. So right now, I have asked George if we would begin our time together.
We want to welcome everybody online, and if you have a candle at home that you would like to light as well, the worship candle is lit. This is an invitation to all of us. I'd like to call it a cosmic invitation, a greater invitation to something more. And so would you join me as we light the worship candle? Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times, come yet again.
Thank you, George. I'm going to ask y'all to stand and sing with us right now, would you please? And just so you know, Mike Brown, our lovely bass player, is sick this morning. So fortunately, we have Kevin Grove that can switch over to bass. He'll be rocking the bass. So possibly Mike Brown is watching online this morning, and we hope you get better, my friend, and we definitely miss you this morning. Here we go. Let's sing this little tune together. Y'all ready?
Joyful hymn of
child. Friends on earth and friends above, for our gentle thoughts and mild, for our gentle thoughts and mild. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our joyful hymn of praise. And Lord of all, to thee we raise this our joyful hymn of praise. All right. That was just splendid. Why don't y'all take a moment and offer one another a sign of peace, would you please? Oh, and just grab a seat whenever you are done mingling. We're going to slide into our Kairos time right now with the song. Elena's going to lead it, and I'd like to have you guys sing with us.
Come now, fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount I'm fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love.
For those of you gathered here in this space and those who are with us online, it is our time to come together in prayer. Now, prayer is an interesting thing. It's a language. It's a holy language in a way. It's a way that we try to communicate what we believe, what we feel, and what we hope for, what we need, and what we long for. So as we gather for prayer at this time, I want to remind you, as we gather in this space, 11:11, we are different people. We have different experiences. We have different journeys of faith that bring us to this moment in time, and yet we are one as we gather. I've shared earlier this morning how beautiful it is in our church that we have a place for everyone to connect. All are welcome here. All are loved. Wherever you are on your journey, you are welcome here in this space. So let us join our hearts in prayer. We breathe in the love that surrounds us before our birth, in the waters that nurtured us in the womb. Upon our birth, the air that fills our lungs and gives us life. The love that sustains us until we can sustain ourselves, and then the love that guides us through all of our days. We are one in our humanity, one in our need for dependence and community, one in faith. Not because we believe the same thing, but because we need to know that we are loved. And as we gather today, we accept that we are accepted. And we accept and welcome one another to this place of grace. Here we find something mysterious and beautiful that compels us to gather and find grace as we meet. And we remember all those who are in great need this day, all around the world, and even in our neighborhoods and in our church, all those who struggle, all those who suffer, all those who need the reminder that we are not alone. So we gather with grateful hearts, hoping for paths of unity to be formed, for hearts of hatred to be changed, for minds to be transformed to love and light and grace that gives peace and hope to all people, every living, breathing soul who bears the Imago Dei, the image of the divine. And we are grateful. So we breathe in this love and acceptance that gives us life and hope, that no matter what is going on in our world, we are here and we are one. And we can face another day because we are surrounded by love that never leaves us and never forsakes us. This is our identity. This is our hope. And in that hope we rest now and always. Amen.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. This next song is Ocean Mary by our friend Peter Mayer from up in Minnesota. Linda handpicked this song for the service, and I'm so glad she did. I love this song. Town. On that street is Mary's house. By the house in a deep ravine, and running there is a magic stream. Lapping over the sand and rock, rocks, it runs the length of Mary's block. Another mile to the riverside, and 1,000 more to the ocean wide. Now down in that ravine one day, by the water Mary lay, put her hand in a shallow stream, and Mary had a magic dream. Yeah. She imagined that inside her stirred all the waters of the earth, every puddle, every creek, and every one of the 7 seas. Oh, and she could feel the fishes roam in her fingers and her toes, and in her chest the Gulf Stream Now ever since her dream that day, people say that Mary's changed. They sympathize when they suppose it must be strange to be the ocean. Now, she senses when the salmon swim, hurricanes they lick her skin, Asia tickles her left arm, and the moon above tugs at her heart. Day, her back is night. She recollects the dawn of life. Tidal waves run up her spine, and lightning tingles when it strikes. Oh, and she can feel the fishes roam, and her fingers at her toes, and in her chest the Gulf Stream. Happened, so it seemed, because of Mary's magic stream. Some will say that lakes and wells and even rain will cast a spell. Every water drop you ask tells a tale of oceans vast. Be careful when you take a drink, there's magic in the kitchen sink.
Oh, you guys are great. Thank you. I love the way Peter Mayer reminds us of creation spirituality, that we are a part of all of this creation, that we are joined in all creation, inspired by it, which is where I hope to go with this sermon today. There's magic in the kitchen sink, he says. Mary discovered that she was part of everything. Reminds me of a story I heard, a friend of a friend of a friend who told this story about a young minister who was working out in her yard after church that afternoon, and she had a 5-year-old daughter, and the little girl was out playing with one of her friends, and she loved to play church, pretend like she was the pastor. So she was listening in on the conversation that her daughter and this friend were having as they were playing with the hose out in the front yard. The little girl lifted the hose as they delighted in watching the water as it sparkled in the sunlight, and she suddenly motioned for her friend to be still and became very serious, and she said, "In the name of God, turn this water into holy water." And she lowered the hose carefully and motioned for her friend to take a drink of the holy water, which she did. And her eyes got big. And then the little girl reached over and she drank out of the hose. Eyes got big. And then they both broke into laughter, and she goes, "Wow, holy water tastes just like garden hose water." True story. There's magic in the kitchen sink if you're just looking for it, or the garden hose. I chose a psalm for the scripture today. I don't usually preach from the psalm, but I thought this one would go so nicely with our theme. Psalm 8. O Lord our God, how majestic is your name in all the earth. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings that you are mindful of them? Mortals, that you care for them. Yet you have made them a little lower than divine and crowned them with glory and honor. You have given them safekeeping over the works of your hands, all the beasts of the fields, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the sea. O Lord our God, how majestic is your name in all creation. Some of you know that I'm a real fan of the night sky. My father was an aerospace engineer, and as by profession and by avocation, he was an astronomer. And so I was one of those kids that was wakened at 2 a.m. so we could go out into the country to watch a particular star that was shining brightly, or a comet that was going through the air. So just going out into the night sky and looking up creates a sense of awe in me. I have one particular memory that stands out for me. I must have been about 5 or 6, and my dad had loaded us all up in the car, my brother, me, my mom. We went out into the country to meet up with a group of friends of his, also astronomers. We were going to look at some planet that was particularly bright at that time of the year, and they had their telescopes all set up. I looked through the lens of the telescope that had been set up ahead of time, and I was shown the moon up close. Wow. And then I went to another telescope, and it was set up on one of the stars. I could hardly see the star, but through that telescope, it was enormous. And then, of course, the planet, I want to think it was Jupiter, but or Saturn maybe, because I remember the rings. Maybe that was another image. But we looked at that, and I thought, I kept pulling away and looking, and then going back to see the perspective again. How could that be this, or this be that? And when you're 5 or 6, it's just hard to take all of that in, to the point where I felt overwhelmed. I remember asking my dad, how big is that planet? He said, I think the answer he said was like 10 times bigger than the Earth. Well, I couldn't even imagine the size of the Earth, much less bigger than that. How many universes are there? We don't know. Solar systems. How many stars did you say? Billions and billions. Everybody started loading up the cars, taking the equipment down, and I remember I kind of wandered off, and I sat on a rock and stared up at the night sky. Everybody else was really busy and wasn't paying much attention, but I was still so amazed and so overwhelmed, and actually felt kind of lonely. And then something occurred to me. It must have been Sunday, because I remembered my Sunday school lesson. I think it was that morning, when we had looked at the Gospel of Luke chapter 12, where it says, Jesus tells his friends that God knows our names and counts the number of hairs upon our head. I wish I could describe that moment for you. The feeling of big and small and overwhelmed with a sense of awe. I still have the sticker in my Bible from that Sunday school lesson. It's a little white Bible. It's a little sparrow right there. I felt so small, and yet I was a part of it all. So in a way, I think I had a similar experience to Ocean Mary, who just has this sense of being a part of something grand. It was probably my first experience of awe, and that awareness of being overtaken with awe. The same God who created all of this knew my name and thought that I mattered in the big scheme of infinity and timelessness. Dr. Owen Gingrich, he's a professor of astronomy at Harvard. He was asked, what is the most indispensable thing for science in the modern age? The most indispensable thing in the modern age. And you know what his answer was? The capacity for awe. Sadly, we get so preoccupied that it is so easy to stop noticing, and awe becomes awesome, and that becomes a throwaway word for everything, doesn't it? Awe. To be truly awed by being here, by being alive, by being a part of this creation. A few years ago, I was listening to a comedian talking about the experience of flying. A man on the row next to him was complaining about the lack of internet on the flight. Another was grumbling about the slow food service. And the woman who was sitting beside him was going on and on about having to sit on the runway for 40 minutes before they could leave. Finally, he said he'd had enough, and he turned to her and he said, "Oh my gosh, really? You had to sit on the runway for 40 minutes? That's awful." And then what happened? Did you fly through the air like a bird? That's incredible. Did you partake in the miracle of human flight? You're flying, lady. You're sitting in a chair, moving at a high speed way up in the sky. That is awesome. She said, "Yeah, but my seat won't go back all the way." Do we have the capacity for awe, or have we forgotten how to be amazed? Do we keep raising the bar of expectations higher and higher, and with each movement we become so accustomed that we can't see what is truly awesome all around us? Take a breath. Open your eyes. Those are miracles. Have we lost the ability, the God-given ability, to be awed? Perhaps in our inability to be awed, or our refusal, maybe that's the epitome of human arrogance. No wonder Jesus advised us to become like little children. They're so easily awed. God, who made tiny baby fingers, an enormous star nebula, that same God knows your name and has the absurd, ridiculous idea to make you and me a little less than divine, and a lot invested in the care and nurture of all this created goodness. It made my head hurt as a 5-year-old. It still does. Psalm 8 says, "When I look at the heavens, the work of your fingers, what are human beings that you are even aware of them?" And then those marvelous words, "Yet." Yet. You remember what comes after that? And yet God has made us little less than divine. God made us, as Mary Ellen said so beautifully, in God's image. And I started thinking about that "and yet," all the things that the Holy One could be, could do, could embrace. And then I thought of some Bible stories that have that "and yet" quality to them. Think about Genesis, the story of the Garden of Eden. It's gorgeous, full of life imagery, the image of shalom in this beautiful garden. God creates woman and man, and the only requirement God gives them is that they enjoy it all. In other words, don't eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's going to spoil all this for you. I've got it. So what's the first thing they do? They want to go eat from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because, you know, if you can be your own God, why not? They cease to be awed. And so they corrupt the shalom with their dishonesty, their lack of respect, their greed, their disobedience, their arrogance. And shalom cannot tolerate that, so they're banished. Now, up to this point, we're really not surprised. That sounds like what a person would do, a human being. You mess up, you got to get out of here. Good riddance to bad rubbish. I heard a guy say this the other day. You betray me, You're dead to me. Yikes. Up to now, we get it, though, don't we? You messed up. They leave naked and ashamed. Yet, what happens next? God makes them clothes to cover their nakedness, symbolically their shame. God has compassion. It's just God's nature to be that way. And then an even more astonishing part of the story, in this myth, this story, the flawed humans are banished from the place of perfect harmony and goodness, and yet, and this isn't stated in words, but we know for sure it happened because you turn the page, God goes with them. Why? What are mortals that you are even mindful of us? Why not stay in shalom and start over? And good riddance to them. They're dead to me, but not God. And yet, God goes with them. That is awesome. Here's another example from one of Jesus' parables. Remember the one about the wealthy merchant who throws this glamorous party for all of his high society friends, but one by one, they all send in their RSVPs, regret, regret, regret. They all have other plans or better plans. They don't really care all that much. But this man wants a party so badly that he takes it to the streets and calls anyone and everyone who wants to come. Doesn't matter who they are, no regard for social climbing potential. He just invites them. All you have to do, he says, is desire to come. I'm having a party. It's a grand occasion. None of the expected guests want to come, and yet there's a party. On the night before Jesus would be crucified, he met with his 12 most trusted companions to enjoy the sacred Passover meal in Jerusalem. He knew it was his last meal with them, probably his last meal ever. And he even knew who was going to turn him in, the one who wanted to kill him. And he was in that room. They all waited for Jesus, the host. This is how it would have happened, to seat them all in their places around the table. And so each place, as I've learned through a biblical archaeologist, I thought this was fascinating, each seat had a special place for it. The host sat at the second chair. The one who was assisting the host would sit at the first chair. The third chair is reserved for the honored guest. And Jesus began to point to the places where each disciple would sit. And he points to Peter, and he points to the last chair. Pretty humiliating. And then as they all stand and wonder who's going to go to the chair of the highest honor, Judas. Remember? Jesus dips it. He feeds him. It's Judas. Why? Why? Jesus smiled and motioned, Judas, come, sit, let me dip the bread and offer it to you, Judas, my betrayer. 11 people who loved him stood ready to be honored, and yet. It's awful, isn't it? I mean, awful. Full of awe, literally. The great and unimaginable unyet of God is amazing. When I look at the incomprehensible vastness of the universe, stare into the depths of the sea, contemplate the fragility of a spider's web or a grandfather's smile or an infinitesimal, I can't say it, little molecule, tiny, how about that, little molecule, or the billions and billions and billions of years of passing time, when I think on those things, who are we? Who am I? Who are you? That God is even aware of us. And yet. But there's more. God doesn't just love you. God doesn't just honor you, have compassion on you. There's more. As the psalmist contemplates the meaning of life and the amazing ways of God, the question directed to God now turns to us, to you and me. Barbara Brown Taylor, Ed, I think you're going to pull that up, said this: "While it may seem more respectable to approach faith as an intellectual exercise, or more satisfying to approach it as an emotional one, our relationship to God is not simply a matter of what we think or how we feel. It is a full-bodied relationship in which mind and heart, spirit and flesh are converted to a new way of experiencing and responding to the world. It is a matter of learning to see the world, each other, and ourselves as God sees us, and to live as if God's reality were the only one that mattered." There's the rub, really. We matter to God. That really ought to disturb you. We matter. That is both incredible and disturbing. The psalmist asks the question of the meaning and purpose of life, and he gets an answer. You matter to God and to God's kingdom of shalom. You are the stewards, the caretakers, those who would be concerned with each other, with the earth, with our own lives. You are the nurturers of this garden. God has conferred upon us the great honor of being a little less than divine, and yet it is not so that we can become self-congratulatory, but participatory. I'm going to say that again because I think you hear from a lot of people in a lot of churches something quite different than that. We matter to God not so that we can become pious, self-congratulatory, and righteous, but so that we can be participatory. We want to know the meaning of life. I think this beautiful little psalm says it pretty well. We matter to God, and our life is about participating in shalom. In other words, we become the co-creators of God's kingdom. When you say good morning to each other, when you go out and play or see a friend or visit a neighbor, when you do what you do, you are a part of co-creating the shalom of God. We are called to see the unlovable and yet love them. We are called to see the unforgivable and yet forgive. To be tempted to use and abuse our natural world for our own use and pleasure, and yet we're called to preserve it, to nurture it, to care for it. To see the ugly, the rude, the needy, the lost, the lonely, the hurting of this world through the lens of awe and be transformed to the and yet of God. This beautiful short psalm speaks directly to the question of the meaning of life. It is not a scientific answer, it is a hymn. It is a hymn that begins and ends with an expression of deep and heartfelt praise and adoration, and in the overwhelming recognition that in the scheme of all things that are and have ever been and will ever be, in the vastness that is literally incomprehensible to our tiny minds, that even though there is no reason to ever assume that the creator of all of this would have any reason to even take note of us, the creator and creating God has conferred upon you and me a lovely, open, gracious invitation of love to join in and participate. And that is amazing and disturbing, but isn't it awesome? Let us pray. Holy One, may we always have the eyes to see the beauty in the mundane, the sacred in the ordinary, and awe that is in all of life. May each of us be awakened to this full-bodied relationship with you and all creation, in which mind and heart, spirit and flesh are converted to a new way of experiencing and responding to the world, that the kingdom of shalom shall be restored for all. Amen.
Amen. We got one more song. Before that, we have a brand new person running cameras today. This is Dave, everybody. Dave, thank you for joining us. Thank you for helping us out. Also, it's fantastic to have Ed Landwehr back running slides. He's been off for 2 weeks. He wasn't vacationing, though. Yeah, give him a hand. He was working in one of those Wild West cowboy shows. You know what I'm talking about? I could totally see you rocking that, Ed. And if that show comes to Fort Worth, you have to tell us, because I want to be front row for that, all right? Okay. Here we go. One more song for you guys. It might seem strange to you, my friend. Some things are always heaven sent. The more you want, the harder it gets. And the more you let go, the more you get. In this crazy, beautiful life, it's a crazy, beautiful life. Some things make sense and you don't know why. It's a crazy, beautiful life. And nothing lasts forever. Someone told me so. Life is always changing, it ain't what you think you know. Even if you're standing still, you're floating in space. So grab a hold of your heart and you'll find your place in this crazy, beautiful life. It's a crazy, beautiful life. Some things make sense and you don't know why. It's a crazy, beautiful life. Wherever you are, whatever you do, whatever wishes might come true, whatever you got, whatever you give, you make it a beautiful life to live in this crazy, beautiful life. It's crazy, beautiful life. Some things make sense and you don't know why. It's a crazy, beautiful life.
I have to wait to see what comes up because I don't have a bulletin either. So someday maybe we'll know. So our benediction. Is it a response? I forgot. No. Do I just say it? Okay, well, why don't we stand and be dismissed? Oh, here we are. I thought I might get some help. Our task has ended. Our certainty is transcended into something unknown and new. So go in pieces. And as we unravel, we travel and mend ourselves into a life that is larger than our illusions, where they and them can become us. And we can see and feel and find our place in the family of things. So go. Go in pieces. Amen.